So once again, I was just greeting everyone, those in the hall, those online. Thank you for joining me tonight and sharing just a little bit of Milarepa. I'll say a little more about him. Again, his most famous work is called The 100,000 Songs, so it wasn't easy to pick a few of them to read on. I spent more time deciding which ones to pick, and I could have probably just randomly opened the text and read anything, but here we are. So let me just say a few things about Milarepa. He was probably one of the most famous practitioners in Tibet. And we'll find out when we get his story. Yeah, Brian, you can turn around. You don't need to. And you'll see why he was. But he's most famous. He was a yogi. A yogi meant he lived. He didn't live as a layman. He didn't live in a monastery or temple. He lived deep in the mountains, or I should say high in the mountains. And we'll talk more about his asceticism in a few minutes. This is a tanka. I don't know if Angie can show this. What? So this is a tanka. I don't know if Angie can zoom in on Milarepa's Tibetan painting of Milarepa. And he's shown in the posture of ease. Even though he lived at 1,400 feet, he was always at ease, showing his meditative attainment. Many of us might realize living at 10, 12, 14,000 feet in the Himalayas, especially in the winter, one would not be at ease. But he was a great yogi also. A yogi is someone who practices yogic practices. So not just the ordinary Dharma practices and realizations, but he also practiced special yogic practices, some of which allowed him to live at such heights, with really hardly any clothing at all. So we're talking about a man who lived in the 1200s, the exact dates are not known. And one of the reasons he's much loved by the Tibetan people, not only as the founder of one of their major sects, but also just as a human being, is because his story is so unique and so relevant and so inspiring. Because they believe that he became a Buddha in one lifetime. He came to full realization in one lifetime by making incredible efforts. Actually, in Tibet, there are many different collections of the 100,000, and there are a few others that are major collection of his songs. He was unique that he gave most of his teachings in spontaneous songs, Dharma songs. He would just somebody would ask him a question about Dharma, and he would just turn it into a song, poetry. And to this day, there's a whole class of kind of troubadours who wander about, and they've memorized numerous of his songs, and they sing them. I happened to be in a Tibetan settlement in the 70s when one of these gentlemen showed up, and it was quite wonderful. They're very unique, the style of singing. And just people gather around and listen, the same way we listen to pop music or things. They would listen to the enlightened songs of Milarepa. Yeah, so he was born, again, in the 10th century, up to probably, I think, 7 or 8 years old. He had a normal childhood, so to speak. He was in these were very simple people, but in a village, his family was comfortable. And you have to understand what we think of comfort and what Tibetan traditionally think of comfort is very different. but they were comfortable. And then when he was 7 years old, his father died, which was, sort of a disaster for everyone. And the father, in his will, said until his son, I think his name Topaga, or something like that, he wasn't called Milarepa then, whatever his name was, until he became into his majority of age, probably around 16 or so, all his assets, lands and whatever assets he had, would be in the care of his brother, Milarepa's paternal uncle. But what happened very quickly was, as opposed to sort of being custodians of the family and the caretakers of the family, they basically they sort of took all the assets, all the lands, and turned Milarepa's mother and sister and him into like their servants. So, it was quite a change for them. And to the mother, it was a great source of anger and resentment that over the years kept getting deeper and deeper in her. And so when Milarepa became a teenager, the mother was so full of hatred for the betrayal of his uncle and aunt and what they had done to them, that she encouraged him to pursue the black arts, which meant to go find a shamanic teacher, a master of the black arts, to wreak revenge on not only the aunt and uncle who had done this, but for the other villagers for kind of letting them get away with it. And so Milarepa spent several years, his mother kind of funded him, studying with these great black magicians. And he mastered arts of destruction, and he mastered arts of making hail. And at a certain point, when he had mastered those trances and those capacities, he returned to the village. The uncle was having a wedding for his elder son, and Milarepa did his magical thing and caused the whole building to collapse on the wedding party. And I think 30-something people were killed. Great revenge. But the uncle and the aunt weren't killed. And when somebody had figured out, because he'd done it up on a mountaintop, overlooking, that he was behind it, they started kind of abusing the mother and the sister. And when Milarepa heard about it, he used his power over hail to create a hailstorm that destroyed all the crops. And having done this, we might say the mother and uncle were afraid and no longer persecuted the mother. So after this, Milarepa began to have just feelings of great remorse, because they were a Buddhist community, and he knew killing and revenge and hate were not in the Buddhist path. So he began to have remorse for what he had done, and therefore sought out Buddhist teachers so where he could learn the Dharma and sort of atone for what he had done. Because his karma of killing so many was so heavy, and so all of you who think you have heavy karma, please pay attention. Again, he not only destroyed, he killed, I think, 30-something people. He destroyed the village's crops. So he went to kind of a standard teacher who felt that the heaviness of his karma was too much for him to teach. And he was teaching Milarepa ordinary kind of practices, and Milarepa was getting no success with them. So they felt his karma was too heavy. So he needed an expert. And there was this famous teacher named Marpa. And Marpa is a very key person here. Marpa was a layman. He had gone at least once, if not more times, to India. And he had met great yogis like Naropa and Talopa. We won't talk about them, these great Mahasiddha masters. And he had mastered many of these teachings. And he had brought them back. But he lived as a layman and had a wife, I don't know if he had kids, and had land, and didn't have a monastery or anything. But he was a character. And he was a character. And he knew that Milarepa was coming, and he knew through his powers that Milarepa was to be his major disciple and carry on the lineage in Tibet. But he also knew that Milarepa had this very heavy karma from killing all these people, which would prevent him from really having any kind of realization. So when Milarepa came to him and offered him whatever he offered him, gold or whatever, to teach him, Marpa refused to teach him. And he said, before I teach you, I'm going to give you some tasks to do. He didn't explain why. It was just sort of, sort of like a test. And basically, for a long period of time, he basically had Milarepa, he said, I need you to build a tower for me on my land. And so he told him, showed him where it was going to be a 10-story tower. Basically, to summarize it, no matter what Milarepa did, he never did it right. He'd work hard, he'd carry these stones, these big heavy stones, he'd build this thing, he'd be nearly half dead, and then when he was done, he would tell Marpa would come out. He'd beat him unmercifully and called him a complete idiot. I didn't tell you to put it there, I told you to build it over there. Now take it down and build it over there. Right? And he did this many times. And each of those times, while Milarepa was in despair and distraught because he wasn't being taught, he never lost faith in his teacher. Right? And anyhow, it's a little complicated story, but the major thing is this understanding that his teacher had about his karmic load, and realizing that there were things that he had to do to free himself from that before he would be a fit vessel for the Dharma. So a lot of preliminary work had to be done, and it was incredibly harsh. I think most people would have left right after the first one. The first stone tower was taken apart, but Milarepa just incredibly stayed with it. Did he despair? Did he go through doubts? Did he have nights of just... but he stayed with it. And finally, Marpa taught him. And basically his instructions were to him to go into the mountains and just practice until he came to full realization. So this was Marpa's instructions to him. And that's what Milarepa did. He really spent his whole life living in caves deep in the Himalayas, and would wander about 3-4 years here, a couple of years there, living under what we would consider the most extreme circumstances, with only a cotton shawl as his clothing. He didn't have food. He lived on nettles and other kinds of greens that he could pick. Oftentimes he didn't have anything, so he sort of underwent the most extreme kind of asceticism. But his teacher had told him, you can come to full realization. And eventually, people began to hear about him. He began to gather disciples and students. He began to teach, and from him comes one of the major Tibetan lineages called the Kagyu lineages. So that's Milarepa. And again, he's most loved because his story shows that somebody with the worst karma, such as the karma of sort of being a mass killer, right? Somebody who was consumed by hatred and resentment, could change. And not only could he change, but he could, awaken to the full potential of what it means to be a human being, which is to become a Buddha in one lifetime. So his story, just as a story, just as a life, is incredibly inspiring. And the other thing, of course, is with all these obstacles, all these difficulties, all these challenges, he never wavered. Right? He had only had one thought, which was to awaken and to work to benefit people. And so that single-mindedness, that energetic single-mindedness, was very inspiring to people. And you might ask, but the path he followed, which was this path of renunciation, so extreme, why could lay people, he's not an example to lay people. But traditionally, somebody like that is an example to lay people, because he shows the truth of the Dharma, and he shows us that with all our attachments, and we'll hear some of his songs tonight, that it is possible for somebody to live free of them. Right? And so it's a good reminder to us, because we, as you know, we live in the world of attachments, and we think we can't live without them. We live in the world of our comforts, and we think we can't live without them. And we certainly find many other things to do than really dedicate ourselves to awakening. So to have somebody who so powerfully and extremely follows that single-minded path is very inspiring to us, no matter where we are in our practice. So that's, so again, as you can see, I don't know if you can see this, many possibilities that I could have gone tonight, and that was, and there are other books, but anyhow, I picked a few that I want to share with you. And I want to share them with you just to show you different aspects of him, because he taught not only, since he wandered about, he only didn't teach, other types of, dedicated practitioners who might have come to him up in the mountains to be his students, but he taught lots of ordinary people. I mean, he'd go down to villages and beg. He'd run into people along the way, and they'd see him. He often went around naked, if you could imagine going around naked. I mean, he just had no self-consciousness. He just had renounced the worldly life and the world and all its do's and don'ts. I mean, there's a very famous, he had a sister, and his poor sister, when she found out, because he had left home, when she found out he was still alive and where he was, she would constantly come to him, and all kinds of, so many stories of where she would just try to inveigle him to leave, and come down, and join life in the thing. And it's a little off color, but at some time she said, at least let me offer you this cloth that you can cover your body, And so he thanked her, and when she came back again, he had cut the cloth, and he had made like a little, I don't know what you'd call it, little bag to cover his penis. That was what he did. Rather covering himself up, he covered out the part with the biggest shame. I mean, it was just so funny. I mean, she was just so embarrassed by her brother. So let me just give you. I just want to give you a flavor of it. Maybe stimulate your own interest in reading his songs and stories. So he went, here he's going to Luminosity Cave, and he was begging for alms in the practice of equal taste. That means he's begging for alms, and he's not, there's no discrimination between wanted food, unwanted food, dirty food, clean food. Everything had one taste to him. He came across a large group of people, and he said to them, "Benefactors, I'm a yogi, I've come here seeking provisions." And they asked about him, and everybody had heard about him and what a great wonder he is. And among them was a couple who invited Milarepa to their home. Out of respect and service, they asked him, about his relatives. He said he's left his relatives and country behind. They said, "Please, can we adopt you as our son? We have an excellent estate you can live on. We can get you a beautiful wife, and you can have your own family." And Milarepa said, "I don't have any need for these things. I've renounced them all." And just to give you a flavor of him, and again, this is the way he would teach lay people, and many of the songs are in relation to lay people, as you'll see. He says, "So I've renounced them all." And now he sings a song. "At first one's homeland is happy and pleasant, but it becomes like a rasp scraping at one's body, speech, and mind. In the middle, one plows with much toil. Then one plants seeds, but they don't come up. That city of famine, that terrible land. Finally, leaving behind, we go away." He says, "I do not wish for this temporary dungeon. I will not become your adopted son." And then they said, "Well, why don't you at least, we'll find you a bride, even if you won't, He said, "This companion," women don't take this personally. He says, "This companion shall at first be a smiling goddess, with a face so lovely you'll never have enough looking at her. And then in the middle, she'll be like a devil with the eyes of a corpse. Say one thing to her, she'll snap back twice. And, if you hit her with a stick, she'll hit you back with a ladle. In the end, she'll be an old cow without any teeth. And you'll be endlessly troubled. I've abandoned this. I have no wish for a young female friend." And then they said, "Well, at least you probably want a son. It was that kind of society. Have a son. The son would be handsome in the beginning, like a divine prince. You love him so much, it's hard to bear. In the middle, he'll be a creditor to you. You give him everything, he'll never be pleased. Then he'll bring someone's girl into the home, and the parents who were so kind, he'll kick you out. So the father cries, there'll be no response. So the mother cries, he won't reply. In the end, the neighbors, without any affection, will say spiteful things and bring you ruin." He says, "In the end, your mind will just be troubled." And he talks about a daughter that way, and then he talks about, in the beginning, families are happy to meet, and they smile when they see each other. "Come over," they say, "stay here." Such talk fills the whole valley. In the middle, they become those who owe meat and beer. They give gifts back and forth to each other. In the end, there's just attachment and aggression, and everybody lives in regret. With the source of quarrel and misery, your mind will be trouble. I've abandoned friends to just hang out for fun. I don't wish for any worldly relations. And then they offer him wealth. At first, wealth makes one happy and the object of others' aspirations. However much one has, one will never be satisfied. In the middle, one becomes bound by the knot of miserliness. Once you have, then you become miserly. And one won't be able to practice generosity for the sake of virtue. What you accumulate, in the end, others will spend. In the end, it'll all end up in death. Enemies will seek after your wealth, and your mind will be troubled. I've abandoned all the temptations of samsara. How are you doing with this, lay people? Now again, he's a renunciate. It's quite strong what he says, but is there truth for this? Think about all our familiar relations. Not saying they cannot be sources of happiness, but they often do trouble the mind a lot, don't they? There's a lot of drama, always being troubled. And so he says, I don't have any of that. If you think about all the dramas that you have with other people and friends and family and parents and children, right? Why don't you take a moment? Anybody have any kind of drama like that? And he says, you can't entice me. I don't have any of that. I'm free of it all. I live freely. So even though we can say there's an extremity to him, we can certainly say there's truth to everything he says, right? I mean, when at a certain stage of life, we're very busy accumulating possessions, right? And then after we accumulate them, unfortunately, then what do we have to do? What? Well, no, we have to take care of them. And all of a sudden, our whole life is consumed with taking care of our possessions, right? Fixing them, cleaning them, protecting them, And he says, I don't have to do any of that. Why? How can you possibly entice me, since I have freedom? So anyhow, you can see why, he's very enjoyable. But let me go on and get into some of his Dharma teachings. I wonder if I wrote down the wrong pages here. Forgive me a second. Oh, so as you can see over here, this is something I got when I lived in the Tibetan community. It's a picture of Milarepa. It's sort of appliqué, and you see him. This is a very famous anecdote, and there are a number of them. Since he lived up in the mountains, this is an encounter with a hunter, a dog, and a deer. But let me just give you a sense of the way they write here. So this is at a certain point. He had all his disciples in retreat. He went to an isolated place. Just sit back and listen. It's really quite a very high and rugged mountain along the border of Nepal and Tibet. So he mostly lived in southern Tibet and northern Nepal. It was covered in thick fog and clouds from which snow and rain continually fell. To the right were high rocky mountains with steep cliffs, where howls of beasts resounded and vultures, the king of birds, would soar. To the left were soft hills with rich grass, where grazing animals, deer, antelope, wild sheep, would leisurely jump and play. In front was a beautiful forest, with a variety of bright-colored flowers, with monkeys and langurs would train their skills. There peacocks, nightingales, many beautiful birds with lovely voices would sing their songs, tweeting and dancing to the sounds with their wings. Below, in front of Milarepa's retreat cave, was a brook that flowed unceasingly down from the snow through the rocks, babbling pleasantly as it went. How's it sound? And it was all for free. The place where Milarepa stayed was remote and delightful, a solitary place, had all the conducive conditions for practice. It was known as Kaya Cave. So anyhow, the scenario here is that one day he hears a dog barking. He comes out to see what it is, and all of a sudden, a deer approaches him, obviously terrified. Unbearable great compassion arose in his mind, thinking, it is by the power of previous bad karma that a body as this has been taken. This being has not done anything wrong in this life, yet must experience such unbearable suffering. What a pity. I will teach the Dharma of the Mahayana and lead him to eternal bliss. So he would teach animals. So he basically, I won't read it all, but he taught the Dharma to this deer. And all of a sudden the deer lays down beside him. Then all of a sudden there's a dog barking, and the hunter's dog shows up, right? It's been following the deer. And so similar things happen. Milarepa says, the dog appeared, red in color with a black tail and a cord around its neck. All 4 of its claws were shredded from running on rock, and her tongue was flapping from her mouth like a banner. This dog barks ferociously with great aggression and malevolent mind, and that runs shooting through space like lightning. This is who is chasing the deer and wants to do it harm. Whatever outer-peering things this dog sees, she takes them as enemies. She's never free of aggression. How good it would be if I could pacify her anger. So she teaches the Dharma with a great compassion, and the dog lays down by her side. And then all of a sudden, a man appears with dark complexion, angry eyes, with his hair tied on top of his head. He held up the bottom of his chuba, which is his robe. He wore an antelope skin hunting coat with a lasso over the shoulder, carried arrows and a bow in his hands. He was breathing heavily, with his head so covered in sweat that it gleamed as if it was blood. When he reached Milarepa, he saw the deer and the dog lying at his feet like a mother and son. He thought, did this meditator do something bad to them? He became angry and shouted, These yogis and hermits, they're all over the place. You know, when you go up into the high mountains to kill game, they're there. When you go down the lakes to catch fish and otters, they're there. And in between, they're in the villages. Anyhow. If 1 or 2 of them died, there would be no fault with that. You may be able to take my deer and my dog, but let's see if your cotton cloth can take my arrow. So you get a flavor. I mean, these songs are filled with these real life kind of stories of his encounters with people. So he took an arrow, fitted its notch in his bow, and went up to Jotson. And then Milarepa thinks, if I can teach Dharma to these animals who are naturally ignorant and they understand, I guess I could teach Dharma to this human too. So he says to them, to the hunter, human, what do he call him? Human. See, he's sort of non-discriminatory. He'll help humans, he'll help animals, he'll help ghosts, human. There's plenty of time to shoot arrows. Take your time, listen to my song. Then abiding within a state of wisdom, love, and power, with a melody like Brahma's, he sang this song of realization. Listen here to my song, you sentient being with the human body and the face of a demon. He's talking to the hunter. Listen to my song. It is said that human bodies are precious and rare, but to look at you, there's nothing rare at all. You've had the body of a demon with so much negativity. You disregard the sufferings all around you, and all you do is work for the desires of this life. But you won't get what you want through negativity. If you give up attachment within, you'll attain realization. You'll never be able to tame outer appearances. The time has come to tame your mind. Killing this deer will not content you. If you kill the 5 inner poisons, the 5 inner afflictions of your mind, then you'll get what you wish. Though you tame all your outer enemies, there'll always be more. Tame your inner mind, and there'll be no more foes. Without wasting this human life doing negative deeds, if you practice sublime, genuine Dharma, that would be excellent. And I'm willing to teach you all the yogic dharmas and all the meditation. So he was fearless, wasn't he? I mean, it's really kind of wonderful. So he takes his hunter, and he's fearless, and he just tells it to him right like it is. Your whole life is meaningless. You're just consumed with anger, and you'll never get what you want this way. Give up. Your true enemy is inside you. It's in the 5 poisons. You subdue that enemy, and then you'll be liberated. And I can show you how to do it. Stay here with me. Then the man thought, I can't be completely certain about what he said before. Now, before, these deer was very frightened, and the dog was very aggressive. I've never seen anything like this today. They lie together beside this man like a mother and child. As for me, I've never dropped an arrow even in snowy white mountains of winter. But here I helplessly dropped him. Remember, he was going to kill him. Either this man is a master of black magic, or he's truly a special kind of teacher. I should look and see how he lives, sort of like check him out. So he went to the retreat cave where Milarepa lived, and he saw that he had no food provisions at all, other than some roots and their leaves, and no other belongings at all in there. He staggered. This is the hunter, as faith arose in him. Lama, who is your teacher? And what is the Dharma that you practice called? Where do you come from? Who is your companion? What do you own? If I am acceptable to you, I will offer you the life of this deer and follow you as an attendant. Anyhow, so he sings him a nice song. And so he sang this song, gave him some teaching. And then the man offered the deer, the dog, and everything. He said, please accept me as a servant. Let me go home and get some provisions from my family, and I'll return. Will you stay here? Or please tell me where you'll be. No, Milarepa was pleased with the offering of the deer, and that the hunter's mind had turned to Dharma. But then he said to the hunter, Son, that you have abandoned negative deeds and will practice virtue is truly wonderful. But it will probably be difficult for you to go home and then come back later as you intend. However, even if you did, the place where I stay is never certain. I'll be difficult to find. Therefore, if you want to practice Dharma, you should cut all your ties to the family and follow me at once. This is the reason why I wander and never stay in the same place. It's very interesting, isn't it? So the man says to him, he's very moved by Milarepa, by his words, by the way he lives, the purity. He offers himself to him, and then what does he say? You see what's going on here? What does he say? But hold on a second. I need to go back home, kind of square things with my family, get everything straightened out, get a bunch of provisions, get all my affairs in order, and then I'll be back. And Milarepa, that's like us, isn't it? Right? We have such good intentions, don't we? See, he has such good intentions. I want to practice with you forever. I want to be your attendant. I'll be back. But first I got a few things to take care of. And for many of us, there's always those few things that we need to take care of. And Milarepa sees this. He says, if you go, you won't come back. So Milarepa says to him, if you really want to practice Dharma from the bottom of your heart, then meeting with your family is pointless. To practice Dharma by undergoing hardship, you don't need to have any special provisions. Things like plants and fruits from trees, these are the substances that we live on. They'll be fine. The time of death for this human life is uncertain. Besides, there's a danger that the excellent intention you have right now might change. So you should stay here now. Before you go to speak with your family, listen to my advice. Listen, listen, hear you, hunter. The thunder sound is great, but it is an empty sound, right? It's there and then it disappears. The rainbow's color is lovely, but it will disappear. The mundane world may seem delightful, but it's just a dream. It has no substance. It won't last. Sensory pleasures are blissful, but they're the cause for non-virtue. Though compounded things seem permanent, they quickly disintegrate, including our bodies. Yesterday's things aren't here today. A person with us last year, this year may have died. We can all think of people who might have been with us a year ago, 2 years ago, who aren't here anymore. A good friend may turn into your enemy. Has it ever happened? Food that's nutritious could be a source of poisoning to you. Those who care for kindness with you can fight with you. One's own negative action often just brings harm to oneself. Among 100 heads, you primarily cherish your own. Among your 10 fingers, the one cut will hurt. Right? Among your family, it's yourself who you cherish. This life isn't permanent. You soon will die. It's no good to put off practicing Dharma. The time has come to help yourself. The family you love are only propelling you into samsara. Now is the time to come follow a teacher. You'll be joyful in this life and happy in the next. The time has come to practice Dharma. Anyhow, he stayed, and he became one of the disciples of Milarepa. And so Milarepa gave him all the necessary teachings and instructions. Through meditating on them, the man perfected his experience and realization and became one of the heart sons of Milarepa. From that time forth as well, the deer and the dog were liberated from suffering in the lower realms. It is also said that the bow and arrow the hunter offered remained at the cave to this day. So let me stop a moment. I mean, there's lots of implications. So how is this, as we say, how is this landing on you as you listen to these teachings of Milarepa? Very, very different kind of teachings than what we're used to, right? Because he's a yogi. He's an extreme hermit. He's an extremist, right? And yet, is there some truth to what he says? Yes, Jim? And anybody, Angie's, so if anybody at home wants to share anything, please do.
I have difficulty with the huntsman.
The hunter?
The hunter just not showing up to see his family again. I think that's what happened. If he just goes along with Milarepa, that's it. He just basically abandoned his family.
Yeah, I know.
So doing, it creates a lot of suffering for them and more karma for himself. So I have difficulties reconciling.
So we don't know, do we know, Jim? We don't know what happened, do we?
No.
No, we don't know. So, yeah, so in Jim's world, doing something like that, right? I mean, you might also say, I mean, look at Siddhartha, who became the Buddha of this, right? He snuck away from his wife and son in the middle of the night. Didn't even leave a note. I mean, he came back years later. Yeah, I mean, it's... Yeah. So he's saying to him, what is he saying to him? Right now, you're living a very narrow life, right? Involved with your family, involved with your, provisions, involved with all the dramas of daily life. That is only keeping you back from really doing great benefit in this lifetime for many people. If that's really what you want, stay here and devote yourself to cultivation. If you go back, there's always a danger you won't come back again. Right? You'll get ensnared again. I'm not saying this is right or wrong, Jim. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, there is something that's being said to us here. And I think what we have to do is listen, is there any truth to that? Is there any truth that, embroiled with lay life, as we are, there's all kinds of stuff that we're involved in, which you might say, what? Takes up a lot of time. In the end, what does it produce? Right? Right? I mean, the reason Siddhartha left the palace, because he looked at everything when he found out that everything was impermanent and that everybody was going to die and he'd have to leave everything behind. I mean, which is the truth. He thought, then what am I doing this whole for? Right? I mean, Dharma just presents the facts. Each of us is free to do what we want with the facts. Right? So this body that we lavish so much attention on, right? We care for, we do everything we can to keep it healthy, and that, it could still start malfunctioning tomorrow. And at the end, it's going to waste away, right, in a very short period of time. And all our efforts, what do they add up to? So in a certain way, in the extremity of his message, each of us have to go, is there any truth to what he's saying? Do you think there's any truth to what he's saying? What? Oh, you can't hear what I'm saying? Oh, you don't have your hearing aids in?
Just the last one I couldn't grab.
Oh, I don't know. What did he say? I forgot. Can't keep track of him. I'm saying, is there any truth to what he says?
Sure.
Yeah, that's all. And that's for each of us to I mean, this is a story, of a great yogi who's following a certain path, and he's totally committed. He's 100% in. And people believe that he became a Buddha, fully enlightened in one lifetime. And his tradition lives on today and has liberated hundreds of thousands of people over the last 1,000 years or more. I mean, how would that compare to bringing home a dead deer to his family and feeding them? I don't know. You see what I'm saying? I mean, it just, again, I think these things are meant to get us to reflect. Because there is some truth. I mean, is it true, Jim, that all the pleasures and fun of life only last as long as they last and then they're gone? Indeed. I mean, is it true that everything we've ever done in the past is over and gone? No. I mean, you know what I mean? There are certain truths that, again, we don't want to talk about, right? Why don't we want to talk about them? Like we people go on about, our society we live in, denial about death. Like nobody talks about death, right? And yet it's the most obvious, common fact to every human being, whether you hate them or love them, whether they're your friend or your foe, whether they're rich, whether they're poor. We're all going to die. And on the way there, we may get sick. And that which we gain, we may lose. Right? And those that praise us may blame us. Right? And those who are our friends may become our foes. And those, is there some truth to that?
Yes.
That's all. It doesn't mean that your choice may not be to, renounce it all and not go home tonight to your wife and, you see what I'm saying? But it may cause you to go, maybe I need to kind of look at, where I put my energies. Right? Again, we have to remember, that Milarepa wasn't out there being an evangelical. He was all alone way up in the mountains. And this hunter shows up at his cave. And after he teaches him, the hunter says, I want to stay here and be your disciple. Remember, he offered that freely. All Milarepa is saying, I hear you, but you say it now, but when you go back in the valley, you may, because what do you think the family is going to say to the hunter? When he says, I met this great teacher up there, I want to really follow him. What do you think his family is going to say to him? Don't do it. Don't join that cult up there on top of the hill. Right? Anyhow, thank you, Jim. Other comments, questions? As I say, it's really quite something. This means everybody's, what is this saying to people when they hear these teachings? Especially as lay people, and most of us are lay people fully involved in the world, right? To one degree or another. We have relationships, we have work, we have mortgages, we have houses to take care of, we spending endless time. Look at poor Brian over here, works hard, and he's got to take care of his yard on the weekends, and it's hot out there, right? Clean the house, right? Same, Melissa too, you got to take care of all that stuff, right? Yeah. Plus you got to take care of him. It's like, yeah. Then there's Milarepa saying, I don't have any of that. I don't have any of that drama. I don't have to clean anything. I don't have to shop. I just go, I eat what I find around. Again, it's not saying that that's a life that we, are ready to embrace on, but it's kind of, we go, maybe there's some truth to what he says, that's all. Anybody else want to share a comment? Yes, sir. In the back here.
I really enjoyed that piece that you were sharing about dealing or focusing on not just, slaying your enemies and that sort of thing, but going in the internal, in your internal mind and dealing with the things internally.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to ask if you could elaborate more on some of those things.
Well, I'm really not going to give teachings tonight. I just want to share Milarepa. But you mean where he said about to the hunter, he said, you're all focused on external enemies. Those aren't your enemies. Because even if you slay them, only more will appear. But your real enemy is your own afflictive mind And all the afflictive poisons like greed, like anger, like selfishness, like fear, he said, these are your enemies that are really doing you harm. He said, those are the enemies you should be slaying if you want to be free. So that's what he's, and that's a major shift, right? Because most of us, we live focused, on the external world, blaming others for the situation in our life, and to go, stop it. Your enemy is inside you.
Yes.
Right, and that's the one you should be focused on. And then he says to him, and I can help you do that. But the way you're living your life, it's endless. Right? You just, you're endlessly angry. Remember he said that I look like a devil. He's so infuriated, right? When he saw that, Milarepa had, there was a deer that he was hunting, laying down by his side, and there was his hunting dog, he was laying by his side too. He was furious. And at the end, what? Milarepa got the hunter, calmed down, and lay by his side, right? So, a very profound teaching for all of us.
Thank you.
Good. So let's Brian, I realize I don't have a watch or anything, but what you can just put a clock in front of me. So let me do one more. The hour is late. And this is a great one. Thank you. So this is about his meeting with a young woman, 16. So he's going traveling between. Again, he would live up, he'd live high up in the Himalayas. But then, for provisions or something, and they basically lived on tsampa. Tsampa is this kind of barley grain that Tibetans live on. And they would come down, around harvest time to get some. Because then they'd go up back in their caves and they'd be, snowed in for 6 months. So... Or he would travel around. So one day he encountered a young lady of 16 with dark skin, with bright yellow hair. It's interesting for Tibetans, bright yellow hair. And wearing beautiful clothing and ornaments. She had been to fetch water when Milarepa said, "Young lady, can you please give this yogi today a meal?" So, he follows in the Buddhist tradition of begging food. She replied, "If we whose doors are by the road gave meals to every beggar that came by, we would never manage." And she went home. That's called a brush off. So he stayed where he was, and that evening the young lady had a dream. Recalling the dream, she thought, "We do not generally know when there is a Buddha who is in human form. It is possible that one called Milarepa could be a Buddha. If so, then last night's dream is certainly due to his compassion. She must have had a wonderful dream. I will see who he is." And so she took some food that she'd prepared and she served it to him. And she said, "Yogi, where are you from?" And he replied, "I'm one of the beggars." Are you sort of getting a sense that this is very informal? It's profound, but it's told within the context of kind of real life encounters with real people, hunters, in this case, a young girl of 16. See, I'm one of the beggars in your neighborhood. Are you not the Jensen Milarepa who stays at the Belly Cave? Yes, that is so. With faith that so overwhelmed everything within her body, every hair on her body stood on end. She prostrated to him and said, "You were the one who was in my dream last night." "What was your dream?" he said. "I dreamt that the sun and moon were inside of me, but they had no light. Then another sun and moon dawned in the east, and the light from those lit up the sun and moon within. The sun and moon went out of my body and then mixed with the light of the sun and the moon in the east. With that, I could say the entire universe became illuminated. Maybe some of us every now and then have had interesting dreams that have some degree of a qualitative different than our usual dreams, that have some kind of meaning. She obviously had that. So when the sun and the moon that had no light left her and went out and combined with the sun and the moon outside her, she saw the entire universe became completely illuminated. Everything was totally lit up. She says, if I follow and attend, she calls him the Jetson, which is his name, will the Dharma dawn that way for me? And he said, it is possible that it will. And so he blessed her and he returned to his cave. Not too long after, she came with a friend and requested Dharma teachings. She offered him a piece of gold, and she sang a song to him. Great yogi, kindly listen. When I look at my body that was born, I see it as impermanent, like dew on grass, and that makes this girl uneasy. When I look at the friends who accompany me, I see they're impermanent, like the guests at a gathering. That too makes this girl uneasy. When I look at the wealth that's been amassed, I see it's impermanent, like the honey of a bee. That too makes the girl uneasy. When I look at the land where I was born, I see it's like a prison of an evil king. That too makes this girl uneasy. Many people feel somewhat imprisoned by their situation in their life, right? Feel like the circumstances of life, the causes and the conditions of their life are sort of preventing them from being free. In the day, I investigate with an intellect. At night, without sleeping, I ponder and think. By the power of my previously gathered merit, this time I've attained a human body. Months and years follow at my back, but only days and hours lead on in front. With every moment that passes, my death comes closer. She's only 16. Interesting, she thinks this way. Like a rotting tree trunk, my body's soon to collapse. My breath, like mist, will dissolve. With my mind in such a tussle, I can never sleep. Lord Father, great Jetson, at your feet I supplicate, may my mind stay focused on the genuine Dharma. Please be my refuge. With your kindness, please grant me this sublime Dharma. So she might be having what we might call these days an existential crisis, right? She's kind of, looking, she's only 16, but she's looking quite deeply at life, much more than most 16-year-olds. And what she's seeing causes her great unease. And so she wants to be free. And so she comes to him for teaching. So now Milarepa is saying, parenthetically, thus she sang. In order to test whether she was able to practice Dharma devotedly, and to see if she would still practice if drawn toward mundane concerns. See, can you see how teachers operate? He didn't go, oh, this is great, come on in, I'll give you anything you want. He says, she sounds good, right? She sounds good, doesn't she? But how do I know that she's really able to practice Dharma devotedly? And would she still practice if the things of the world began to draw her back in? Would she still continue to practice? So before he's going to teach her, he's going to what? Test her to see if she's really serious. So he said to her, I have no need for your gold. It is not possible for you rich girls to practice Dharma. Even if you could practice Dharma, it's very difficult to become self-sufficient through the Dharma. Now, since you're young, why don't you just go focus on mundane worldly activity? It's very strong in you, go do it. And then he sings a very beautiful song. In this limited ocean of samsara, the miserable beings lack confidence. They wander throughout the three lower realms, though it's possible that they could attain freedoms and resources. Even if they accumulate some merit through virtuous actions, they end up being carried away by their delusions. Even though the one gains a human birth with its many freedoms and resources, one feels like a shining daytime star. But then we feel comfort and we travel that path of comfort. And we never enter the true path of Dharma. Even if they enter the gate of Dharma, those who correctly keep the vows are few. So it's interesting, this is back in Tibet. God knows what poor Milarepa would think if he came into our world, right? Are we attached to our comforts? Do we like our comfortable mattress? Do we make sure we get a nice mattress to sleep on? Do we sure we have nice pillows? Nice soft clothes? I mean, we are incredibly attached to our comfort, right? Especially here in Florida, when it gets a little warm in the house, what do? What do you do, Melissa? Turn up the AC, turn it down, so to speak. Right? We don't, right? Just a little discomfort like that, right? The thought of living in a cave at 18,000 feet, right, in the winter. It's just, comfort. We're very attached to our comforts. We all are, aren't we? Yeah. So I have no need for your treasures. I've sung for you because you seem to be a faithful student, but your faith right now is merely passing. It is difficult for it to be constant and unchanging. Therefore, young girl, it's best that you go. In the future, you can focus one-pointedly on the Dharma. But for now, care for your spouse as if he was divine. Care for your children to whom you're karmically indebted. Work vigorously in the fields, cultivate them fully. Care for your livestock just like your own child. Make offerings to the three jewels. Below, care with kindness for the suffering and the poor. Have respects for your parents and parents-in-law. Be friendly with neighbors in your own land. And make supplications to this old man. Aspire that you meet the Dharma one day in the future. I aspire that your life be auspicious and long. So what is he doing? Is it clear what he's doing? What's he doing, Brian?
He's, like you said, he's testing her, seeing if she really has the drive and if she'll just, step aside if he even just pushes her away a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. He says, that's great, but right now, you're young, go back home, be a model householder. Right? Be a good wife, be a good mother, be a good daughter, take care of everything, be religious, make offerings. And maybe one day, right, you can study the Dharma. So very interesting the way he does it, right? Very sophisticated. He's testing her to see whether, because he's basically talking to her about her life, her comfortable life. And he's saying, just go home and live that life. Is that good advice to a lay person? Yeah, to most lay people that would be good advice, right? Right. Be the best wife, mother, daughter, whatever it is, right? But she came to him and said what? Remember? She shared her dream and she said, I want something different. You see, he didn't impose it on her. He's responding to her. But he knows, that human beings, they can be impulsive, they can think one thing one day and another day. So then she offers a song to him. I bow at the feet of the Jetson, which is Milarepa, who is so kind. Please grant your blessings that my wishes be fulfilled. Lord, great Repa, please kindly listen to me. I offer you these words with great devotion. You'll know if they're sincere or not. I have such great sadness and despair, and pondering over what can be done, I remember impermanence and death from deep within. Since I was born to my mother up until now, I've seen many die, both young and old. Life is impermanent, like a dewdrop on a grass. Days and hours go by unnoticed. There is no place anywhere where death will not come. This I understand. That I will die is completely certain, and once I die, there'll be no control over where I'm born. They believe in rebirth. Contemplating the other modes of samsara, like worldly life, I'll engage in the bad karma of getting married. She says, when you get married, you have to leave your kind parents behind. Right, so this is in traditional Tibetan society. When a woman married, she went to her in-laws' homes. And she would leave her. And it's the same way traditionally in Hindu society, Indian society. You would go to your husband's family and you'd live with them and serve them. So even though you might have the most wonderful family, you have to leave them. You are yoked. And then you could be taken to an unkind man. This is the husband. They have arranged marriages. Anyhow. And you work and you become a slave. And blah, blah, blah. First he's a divine prince. This is the husband. First he's a divine prince with a sweet smile. In the middle he's a demon with an angry face. In the end he's a young bull, always ready to do mischief. Thinking of all this, weariness has arisen within me. Therefore this girl will practice sublime Dharma. For companions I'll stay with my Dharma brothers and sisters. And then she goes on and says, as for temples and the guest houses and so on, very few are built with any meaning. These are all like the good virtuous things that lay people do. They, offer money to build temples and guest houses and do all these work. She said, few of these things have real meaning. They're just more prisons, and they bring suffering to your mind. So she's quite something. But if you seize the mind with bodhisattva intention, then it will be possible for true merit to come. If not, then through focusing on the gathering of wealth, in those days she's talking about raising sheep and cattle, you just get negative karma. You'll become covetous. You'll grow prideful and jealous. Not taking hold of your own faults, you'll always see faults in others. How can you ever be harmonious with everyone? Why don't we just stop? She's really... Is there any truth to what she says? In our minds, do we live in harmony with everyone? I'm not talking how we outwardly appear, but in our minds, do we live in harmony with everyone? Is it true that we mostly see the faults of others, but are blind to our own? She says, all the Buddhas have said, abandon those things that generate great attachment. All the Buddhas have said this. If you use illusion like food and wealth towards virtue, they can become meritorious. Thus I've heard with my own ears. On that account I offer this to you, and having received the sign of my devotion, please kindly teach me the sublime Dharma, I pray. Thus she offered the song that she just sang to him, and he accepted her gold. And then he returned it to her and said, if you will truly practice even at the risk of your own life, then you have entered the gate of Dharma. And from that moment on, he gave her the basic lay vows from the sutra tradition, vows from the mantra tradition, and gave her the name of Sale Ver, which means vivid light. It's vivid light of her own mind. Taking the instructions to heart, she was then sent to meditate, and good qualities of the signs of experience quickly developed. She became capable of remaining in the mountains. He said to her later on, I'm so pleased with your perseverance in meditation. By the experience and realization that you've attained, you will be able to stay in the mountains. Now go to the mountains and meditate in solitude. And keep this essential instruction in your heart until we meet again. And he gave her more instruction. Looking inwardly at your own mind, meditate without any labels or terms. To make appearances dawn as your text. So in other words, take your own mind and the things that appeared, they're the things you read, not the text. Make your own mind what you study. So this is the way of the hermit. You know, they don't study books, they don't read books, they read their own mind. Because that's the source of their delusion and the source of their wisdom. Make your own mind what you study. At all times, in every way, procure the provisions of inexhaustible generosity. Beautify yourself with the ornament of discipline. Shake off and wear the animal hide of patience. Ride the magical horse of diligence. Seek out the noble city of meditation. Become wealthy with the riches of wisdom. Never forgetting the kindness of your teacher. Make many offerings of your experience and your realization. Do you understand this meaning, you woman of faith? Thus he sang. Her faith grew further and she arranged a vast array of offerings and offered them to him. Then according to his instruction, she gave up all the deeds of this life and went to meditate in the mountains. And then there's more. And she becomes another student for many years. She had great signs of meditation and realization. He says, for wisdom to dawn like this is very rare. You have entered the path of omniscience and continue to please meditate in mountain retreats. Accordingly, she remained inseparable from the mountain retreats and meditated. Through this, she became self-liberated, who benefit the teachings and many sentient beings. So this is one of the stories of one of the main primary female disciples of Milarepa, named Salebe, vivid light. Yeah, so that's any comments or questions? Next week I want to share the famous, this wonderful encounter he has with the shepherds, where he introduces these totally uneducated shepherds to the nature of their minds. It's quite profound. I'm going to say Milarepa, he would teach common people, and he would bring them to realization. He was a very profound teacher. And again, one of the reasons I think he's loved by people is because he was a man of the people. he was, even though he lived in the mountains, he would teach anybody and everybody equally. A lot of wonderful stories of sort of more Buddhist scholars and geshes and higher-ups coming to them, and he ate them up and spit them out. He did not suffer fools or pomposity. He was a great teacher, Milarepa. So any final questions or comments before we end for tonight? Yeah, it's a late night. Well, thank you. We'll do one more week next week. Hope you find this. Again, it's not that it's not Dharma you haven't heard, but it's presented in a different way. And my main reason for sharing it is it's inspiring to realize that there are human beings like this who practice in such a way. And again, he came from very humble beginnings. He was a serial killer. Very bad karma, the worst thing possible. And yet in one lifetime he was able to totally transform himself. So it should be very inspiring to all of us. So thank you, everyone. Let me just share the merit, any merit that has come to us from listening to these teachings of Milarepa. May they be shared equally with all whom we encounter, whether near or far away. And may its effects ripple continuously to aid in the healing and the transformation of the world. Good night, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.